All right, I'd like to welcome everybody to our first meeting of the year, 2025, our January 9th Police Accountability Board meeting. Thank you, everybody here in the audience and watching online for attending. We'll start off with welcomes and introductions.
Good evening. My name is Dr. Leslie Myers-Small, and I serve as the Executive Director.
My name is Keith Patterson. I'm an Alliance board.
Good evening. My name is Arlene Brown. I'm an Alliance appointee board member. And healthy new year to all of you that we have not seen or spoken to. The PAB is really set up for one glorious year this year, and we're glad you're on board to help us out with that.
It should make sure I don't follow you. What she said, and Larry Knox, board chair, Northeast seat, and again, really happy to start this new year.
Good evening. William Clark, and I'm the mayor's appointee.
Daniel Cadet, PAB Alliance appointee.
Okay, all right, we'll start with approval of the meeting minutes. They're in front of you, also emailed out in advance.
I didn't see anything that needed to be changed or adjusted. So I moved that the minutes be accepted. Thank you.
Second?
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Okay, we do have a presentation, but before that, I do want to acknowledge a couple of things. One, passing of President Carter. When we talk about leadership in government, I think he's a great example of that. And the whole nation, obviously, is mourning him. I think when we talk about our work for the good of the people and talking with folks that aren't always understood or feel they have a voice, President Carter, if you look at his history before he was president, that was something that he was very, very much focused on as governor, and even afterwards, his history of this post-presidentship volunteering, which all of us here on the board are doing for the better of the community, was a really powerful message to all of us, I think, that are citizens and new citizens to our country, that, the work of somebody isn't just, what you get paid to do, but what you do when you volunteer, which we do as a board. And if you work in government, you got to think about the people that you're representing. Even the partnerships and relationships he built after he left. One of the people that gave a eulogy at his funeral today was Gerald Ford, who wrote one out before he had passed away that he wanted to make sure was read. And that was, president of another party that he beat in an election. So I think that kind of vision that he had of government, I'm hoping that we can kind of replicate our own way here as volunteers and as staff. So I do want to acknowledge the passing of President Carter. Also, we do have some board members missing. Luam, Rabbi Settle, and Yvonne all called in or weren't able to make it. Let us know. We do have one board member that is leaving us, Mary Wambach, who has been an amazing member of our board, isn't able to serve. I'm going to read from the letter that she sent us. Really, really are going to miss Mary. And she's still going to get engaged and be active. This is addressed to us. First, it's been an honor and a huge joy to know and work with all of you. Your kindness, diverse and meaningful experiences, and your deep intelligence make you the best working group I have ever participated in. In addition to the various issues and tasks we have focused on, I have benefited from outstanding training and information that has made me much more aware of regional and national issues that concern PABs and similar organizations. As we all know, there remains so much work to be done. This makes what I must tell you even harder. Due to health and personal issues, I am resigning from the PAB board. This is in no way a reflection of any issue or problem. I value all of you and the mission and work of the PAB, and I will continue to be an active supporter and advocate. If anything, I'm frustrated that changes in my life have made it difficult for me to participate at the level needed. My best wishes to all of you for a peaceful and productive year in 2025. My thanks to Victoria, Ben, and other staff who have been so helpful and responsive. Sincerely, Mary E. Wambach, who was one of the appointees of the Police Accountability Board Alliance. Any other board members or staff have anything to say for Mary? I'm pretty sure she's watching.
I truly am going to miss her. She brought so much to this board, not only making us more aware of the deaf community, but because she has worked in so many different areas, she brought such a magnificent expression and impression of how other people feel, people in the community that we had not considered. And I'm so glad that she's still willing to continue to communicate with us because her voice really, really needs to be heard.
I would agree with that 100%. I know that I will miss her. I will miss her input into the meetings, into the reviews, and she's just a well-rounded individual that I think was perfect for this board, and she will be missed.
So that leaves an opening. There'll be a process for the Police County Board Alliance. We'll give names to City Council, and I believe Council is a much better process than in the past of making sure there's a turnaround, there's a time frame where that seat has to be appointed according to the charter. Look forward to working with the Alliance and Council to get a new member on to represent the Alliance. Dr. Smalls?
Thank you. Good evening again. We have two presentations this evening. The first one is relative to our strategic planning process. And we know strategic plans are critically important because it certainly guides stakeholder collaboration. It will help to organize our agency effectiveness, and it really helps us to continue to advocate for systemic reforms. So when we entered the RFP process, our leadership team spent a lot of time just reviewing, and we really applied due diligence around who we wanted to engage with. And certainly Breakthrough Leadership Consulting really rose to the top because of their work at the national level with civilian oversight entities. And we really thought that that was important contextually to have that background. Additionally, where they're located, they are literally diagonal from their offices, are from the PAB offices, and they understand what's going on in our community. So we were really grateful when City Council approved the legislation and the monies that allowed us to enter into this process. So we've had one meeting with Deb, and it was very synergistic and really, really powerful. We said the next meeting that would be most important would be to engage with the board. We had two board members who were in attendance, Reverend Patterson and Arlene. And so she's going to just present for about 15 to 20 minutes, give you an overview of what we are endeavoring to do. And then certainly she'll open it up for questions. She will be engaging with you more, but we just wanted to make sure as we engage in this process that you were one of the very first stakeholders that she would engage with. So with that, I'll turn it over to Deb.
It's going to work again, right? Just, yeah. No, I'll see. No, we're smaller. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Yep. I'll thank you for the introduction. My name is Deb Hammer. I am founder and CEO of Breakthrough Leadership Consulting. I am excited to be here, see some faces again, meet some of you. Thank you for rescuing me out of the cold this evening. So I'm going to be in front of you just to kind of overview what the strategic planning process is going to look like. And then we'll have a sort of longer time together, sort of ask some questions, dive a little deeper. So just in a very general sense, I always like to sort of frame, and Leslie did a good job of kind of giving us that overview of why strategic planning is important, right? So it's really a way for a group or organization to figure out where they want to go, right? How to get there and what they need to succeed. So we're going to start with kind of understanding the current state, right? Like understanding where you are right now, what's going well, what needs improvement. That process looks like really a lot of stakeholder engagement. And on one of the coming slides, I'm going to talk about the different groups that are included in that stakeholder engagement. But we started that process yesterday, actually, with some faith leaders and then some community partners. So that current state of just understanding where we are now, that context is where we want to begin the process so that we can start thinking about goals and that future state, right? What does the PAB look like in 3 to 5 years from now, right? Kind of thinking about a destination on a map. Where do you want to go? We know where we are, but we don't want to sort of stay in it, admiring the challenges. We want to think about where we're going. And then we're going to make a plan, right? We're going to set those goals and kind of get specific about who's doing what and by when, right? So we don't want to just have a plan that sits somewhere. We want a plan that actually assigns responsibility, deadlines, so there's something that we can look and say, okay, we're making progress in this. We want to think about resources, make sure we're using those taxpayer dollars well, thinking about the money, the tools, that could be information technology tools, whatever the case may be, that let us know that we're doing the work in the best ways possible. And then we want to leave this process, right, with a mechanism for you to be able to monitor progress on this, right? Where are we with the strategic planning goals? How are we doing, like 1 month out, 2 months out, 3 months out to make sure that this is getting walked out in strong ways. To sum this up, basically, a strategic plan is going to allow the PAB to work together to achieve the shared vision, right, that the community has put in front. So this is a high-level sort of timeline overview of process, but we are right here, right now at the beginning. We're just initiating the process. We had the kickoff meeting right before the holidays. And as I said yesterday, we started diving into the stakeholder engagement with some of our community members, right? So this phase is really the stakeholder engagement, reflecting on the mission and vision, right? And then sort of landing this with strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis, a SWOT analysis. So we can say, here's what we heard from this cross-section of folks, right? In sort of an organized way for you to be able to kind of engage with that. And that will set us up very nicely to sort of be able to start thinking about the strategic goals. But where we'll go next is thinking about sort of what the different divisions are doing, right? Like the internal work, the operations, kind of making sure a lot of there's going to be a significant focus on making sure that staff voice, the PAB staff voice, right, is really represented well in this plan. So before we get to that strategic plan development, we want to make sure we've spent our time sort of understanding the work internally. As Leslie mentioned, we are partnering with the National Police Accountability Project that we've done work with before, right? And they are really going to help us think about, when we look at best practices in the investigative unit, when we think about sort of like the deep work and the impact and what's going well in different communities as it relates to police accountability work. That's where we're going to sort of go in the second phase here.
I'm sorry, can I ask a question? Do you
Of
mean
course.
NACO in terms of partnership, or is this another organization?
No, the National Police Accountability
Yeah,
Project.
so that's not NACO.
No.
Okay, that's another organization.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, of course. And then we'll be poised for the actual development of the strategic plan, which, the June date is kind of like when we want it final, right? Like you've engaged in, we've been able to workshop it around, like we feel like this is like the final plan. So hopefully by a May timeline, that means we'll have a draft in front of you and for others to see. Next, we'll go to performance measurement and evaluation. Again, thinking about those measures you're going to be able to look at to say we're making progress on the goals that we've outlined. Here's something that we can use, like in PAB board meetings, et cetera, whatever spaces that make sense to really understand like how these goals are being walked out when that plan is completed. And then we will be around for implementation support and to help sort of close out the work, right? To make sure we're not just giving you something, but we're spending time supporting both internally and at the board level with the implementation. Okay. So for stakeholder engagement, which I said is the first phase, and really, in the way we do this work, we feel like the stakeholder engagement is always the most important part of a strategic planning process, right? We don't want to just talk to kind of like the leadership team or one group. We really want to make sure we hear, all those bright spots, all those challenges from the different perspectives. So for this process, we'll be engaging with PAB staff and leadership, faith leaders, different community partners, and by that I mean like folks who work or are associated with different community-based organizations, youth organizations, the Rochester Police Department, the mayor's office, and community members. And I know there's already some internal work going on with community engagement, so we're making sure that we're sort of collaborating on that. So we're not kind of like reaching out sort of to the same the same constituencies or groups, right? So we're going to stay coordinated on that.
Do you want comments or questions as you go along, or would you like us to hold them till the end?
We could do questions. I can stop talking for a while. Yes.
I know the city council's not on there.
Yeah, council to you.
And also, I just want to express the concern that when you talk about faith leaders, you are actively going outside the Christian community as well to engage other groups.
Yes, thank you. I definitely will update with both of those points. Appreciate it. Are there any other, when we think about like stakeholders, any other groups just like that?
City council is, they're working on getting a schedule, so they might not be up there, but we identified them and they're.
Correct. And we've already reached
They're
out.
on
Yes.
there. And then as
Yes.
far as faith leaders, we have reached out beyond the Christian community. Some folks haven't gotten back to us, but we'll continue to recycle that to make sure we do. But it wasn't just to pastors or priests. We went outside that.
The Police Accountability Board Alliance should be hired.
Yeah, representative.
Police Accountability Board Alliance. They appoint
Yes.
overseas.
Yes.
I know they came under community.
And they are, we actually just set up, yes, they're
They're there.
They're there. My list obviously is not, but yes, they are
It's
there.
for the priority one.
Yeah. And they're scheduled in next week, yeah.
I did have a question about the previous slide, just kind of based off what Rabbi Settle was saying, the National Police Accountability Project. Because we do a lot of work with NACO, we do a lot of our training. So will NACO, is there like conversation with NACO too? And just, I'm not aware,
Yeah, no.
I'm not for the Police Accountability Project, but I just don't know the depth.
There isn't. That doesn't mean we're closed off to it. We've done work with this organization before, so that's why that's sort of like an existing partnership. But that doesn't mean there's not that'll be part of like when we sort of engage when we're engaging with the board. Those are sorts of things that I would ask. You know what I mean? Are there other sort of community organizations so I can understand the work you've done with them? Yes. Yeah. Okay. And so, though we're not going to sort of get into questions this evening, just a kind of like a preview. And sometimes folks have, have questions about what the sort of things we might discuss and talk about. So, really, this is just like a quick, high-level sample, like that we might ask and dig into, right? In what ways is the PAB an asset to Rochester, right? Like, sort of getting your perspective and insight. Do you believe the PAB is achieving its mission? Why or why not, right? Like digging into that as a board and like having your reflections there. And then again, that future state, always like what what would you like to see PAB doing in the community in 3 to 5 years from now? So, when we have our longer conversations, it may be in small groups, it may be individually, that'll all be sort of based on your schedule, but we'll want to sort of like dig into, again, all of the ways that you're seeing this and the work of the PAB so that that is also, again, deeply represented in the strategic plan. Any questions that you have for me or other things that you want to make sure or understand or represented in this process?
So you're gonna have individual meetings with the board members?
My desire would just be for timing to kind of maybe like group folks, kind of do like, like three here, there. Sometimes schedules just won't work out. And
Right.
so then, of course, like if I have to grab somebody one-on-one, that's what we do.
Okay.
Yes. Yep. Any other questions, thoughts?
Can you just talk about maybe similar work you've done somewhere else?
So in the stakeholder engagement, please, sure. So some of the work I think that we highlight the most, kind of in this aspect, the National Police Accountability Project is a group out of St. Louis, right? That we've done this work with before. And so again, in a similar strategic planning process and digging in with stakeholders, the work that we were primarily tasked with was kind of understanding in another similarly situated community, I'll say like that, in the Midwest, what is it that they wanted to, how did they want to independently stand up this function in their city, right? They were having challenges with considering, if they were having challenges with considering where it would be positioned, within the city, representation with different with their different attorneys and legal representation. So there was a lot of murkiness, right? Which there was a lot of murkiness in the establishment of it. So right, our role was to go in and again really help them to align the organization, like establish those organizational structures and best practices, right? To say, like, here's how the work should be happening. Here are clear roles and responsibilities for the work that needs to be happening. And what we found that shined most importantly was how do you communicate that out to the public, right? Which is a conversation that already came up in some of our engagement here in Rochester. But like, really, what does it look like to communicate that work out to the general public so that they know and understand what's happening, and that the message is being directed from a board like this and not necessarily always from the police department. So I think what's exciting about this work here in Rochester is, and again, what we're already hearing is there's an excitement about new leadership, right? There's an excitement about setting a clear path forward. And again, even in that first round of conversation, there was excitement that we were re-engaging with. Some of the folks said, we're happy that you're bringing us back to the table. I think a few were confused that I worked for the PAB, but we weren't worried about that. They were excited that we were reaching out and that they were being brought back to the table. So that was, and made it very clear. I think Mrs. Simon was on one of the sessions with me, like that they wanted to stay involved, that they wanted to hear about how the process was going. Like they said, hey, we don't want to hear about this again only on the news. Like we want to be involved. We've been at the table and we want to remain there. So it's a great start to the process is my point. Great start to the process. So you'll be hearing from us to get scheduled for a further conversation, and thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Will that be emailed to us? Presentation?
Sure.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, the next presentation is Heather. So, just to set this up, and I sent this to you several weeks ago, the language access plan. This is a requirement for us. And, you know, truth be told, we were out of compliance and we needed to quickly get into compliance. And so under Heather's leadership, with her skills, her talents and abilities, she worked tirelessly to ensure that we had a plan and that one was in alignment. And what Heather does is she's really being very intentional about making sure that our focus is just not solely English-speaking populations, right? That we're really looking at the way that we operate through multiple lenses, and that we're also including the deaf and hard of hearing population. So with that, I'll turn it over to Heather, and we'll go from there. And you do have a copy of the plan in front of you if you have questions or want to reference things.
Thank you, because I didn't do that. We are now in compliance with the state laws. The law had changed. My position in general is one of the requirements, but having a language access plan, having the accessibility for 12 different languages on our website, the intake is a vital document. It is now up. All 12 languages are there.
We need to clap on that. That is great.
I want to clap on the whole document.
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you.
Great.
It was a journey, I'll say that. But also, we have added 2 other languages. We're not stopping at the 12 required. We've added Nepali and Somali because they are very vital to this community. We are working on possibly Burmese. It's actually a very difficult language. We're following the lead of the Rochester City School District. When they send out paperwork, they send it in 6 different languages: Nepali, Burmese, Arabic, which we already have, Spanish, English, and Burmese. And so the Burmese is the difficult part. There is no Google translation. I had to find a Google translation for the word Dari in Dari today. The little strange things that come across my desk. But we have the grievance form, which is the form that if anybody comes to the PAB and they say, oh, that interpreter was not good, or I didn't like the interaction I had with somebody, that is also a mandatory form to be in all 12 languages. We have it already translated. It's in process of being uploaded. That's done also, and that is also done in Nepali and Somali. But we also have done a lot of different things that are not necessarily part of this. We had a blind member of the Rochester community check the website. It is fully accessible, and so that is something else that we have added that was not accessible before, and that has changed. I had a list of notes, but I left over there. But we have also done other things like make sure that these are required, and you'll see the required documents. But there are things that come up like there's a form that you have to sign when you have a interview in the office. It is voluntary that you're doing this on your own. And that is not a vital document. So it's not required in all 12 languages. But it is required in definitely Spanish. And we noticed that when a Spanish person came in, it isn't already in Spanish. So as we go through and we're really starting to see more people come into the office, we're noticing that these are things that are going to be needed, and we're taking that into consideration and doing that. So we have also started the project, everything's a project, of ASL. We're going to have ASL, not the intake process on the website, but the information on how to go through and make sure that you can do the access, how to do through the phone, come in, make an appointment, you'll have an interpreter, setting up that whole system. We're going to have a video on the website. There's so much to be done, but now we are in compliance, and we are compliant for another 2 years, and everything has been sent in. And do you have any questions? Yes, sir.
Thank you, number one, for all that work. Two questions. One, for those communities that we've got those translations in, are you working with community engagement? How do we let them know that this is there?
There are so many projects that community engagement is working with. We have been diligent in asking them also, what are we missing? And Dari is one of the languages that the school board does not utilize. And it is something that is not on the 12, but it is something that is popular here in Rochester. So we reached out through, not me, but through community engagement. And they said, we're also missing this. So we're constantly in communication, and we look forward to, now that we also have a bilingual community engagement person, making sure that we are addressing the needs of the community.
There's more questions, like how do, for folks that are Haitian or, or maybe, speak Bengali or Korean, how do we let them know that we have this here in their language? Like
That communication, the community engagement and is working with that.
Okay.
Brianna now coming on, I'm sure that is one of their hit the ground running information. But when you go on our website, it is written in their language. Here's where to find it. Which is why I had to find Dari and Dari, because there's no translation for Google in Dari.
I assume that after you start with Google Translate, you have a native speaker review it. That's Google Translate is certainly not
Google
accurate.
Translate is the only thing that the website does. All of the intake stuff is a native speaker. They've all been, we have branded, stamped native speaker paperwork in the office that says, this is not just Google. Like finding a native Yiddish speaker was our hardest problem because there are not any native Yiddish speakers in Rochester. So we had to go outside and find somebody who, it wasn't their native language, but they were a certified translator for Yiddish. Other than that, they're all native translators.
Well, thank you so much. You've done an awesome job. And a very short length of time, because you have not been on board that long.
3 months.
Whoa.
3 months we did.
That goes to my second question, which is not about this, so you don't need to go into too much detail. But you translated a lot of our meetings before you joined the staff. So just, people may have seen her, in the corner, over the years. So just what's it like been from translating the meetings to being here now after you observed the work kind of from the outside, but really, literally helping us spread the word and now being on staff. That's kind of unique.
Yeah, it is. The posting of this job was the most incredible blending of all of my skills, loves, and talents. And I am so thrilled to be working at PAB. I love everything that we do.
Great. Thank you so very much.
Thanks, Heather.
And we appreciate the decorations.
Appreciate you. So we'll continue to update as we go. And through the Friday letter, we'll give you updates of progress that we're making. But to just key in, and this transitions nicely to the departmental, the divisional updates, public affairs and community engagement. Again, you heard from them last time. They're continuing to go out and they work very closely with organizations and entities that serve individuals who don't speak English as their first language. And so they work very closely with Heather. So that is happening. So I'm going to give you a few monthly, some updates relative to activities and accomplishments and ongoing efforts. And it has been busy since we last met in December. And again, just for the public to hear, transparency and accountability remain central to our mission and our vision and everything that we do. So with public affairs and community engagement, before I get into the details, I do want to introduce Brianna. She, some of you met her at the luncheon. And again, thank you for that. That was really nice. We needed to all go take naps after that, but the food was wonderful. The fellowship was amazing. But Brianna is our new communications manager. She's here. And Brianna, if you would just say a few words to the entire board and just introduce yourself and talk about what you're working on.
I'll come up. You got a spot.
Sure. Hi, yes, my name is Brianna Milan. Before this, I worked as a communication specialist with Action for a Better Community. I'm
Who vote you?
Yeah, right. And that chair, right, near the chair, that's in the
Why
camera.
don't you sit in the chair?
Yeah.
How about that?
I'd like to right here, right here. Good.
Yeah,
Okay.
There you
make sure
go.
you're on camera.
Right, there's a camera. Forget. Yeah, so before I was here, I was at ABC, and I was there for 3 years, and before that, I worked in news for 3 years. So I'm accustomed to a fast-paced environment. I'm very excited for the work that's getting done here. I was working in news when PAB was first voted in, so I feel like I've been along for the ride a little bit in my own way, and I'm really excited to help spread the name of PAB and get more people to understand the message behind the organization. I think there is a lack of understanding of for a lot of community members what goes on in this building and what you guys do at this table. So I think I can have a big hand in helping spread that message and inform people of what we're doing. And when someone asked, what do we want to do in order to let people who speak other languages know that we have those available, there's a campaign in my head already. I'm very, while I was at ABC, I worked a lot with refugees through a program of ours, and getting to know them, also like just understanding language access and things like that, really understanding the importance that they have these very simple things at their fingertips, and they're able to access the same things that we are, is really important to me. So I'm excited to help launch that project and different things I want to help you guys do as well. So I'll be around. I really want to make myself a fixture at the meetings and to be here when decisions are being made. And I feel like when things like this are happening, a communications person should be here. Because, so I plan to be here at the meetings and hopefully doing some kind of recaps after, but, getting ahead of myself a little. But yeah, I'm here and ready to do the work.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Kit. What day is this today?
3.
3, yeah.
But we hit the ground running. So
That's
what I'm
right.
going already.
That's right. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah, we appreciate you. So, under public affairs and community engagement, you know that we've administered the survey. So we hit the 100 mark. So we are really excited about that. And I reviewed the responses that we have so far, and it's broken down obviously by the questions. And so far, the results are very interesting and also very promising. Just a few key things that I'll share with you, and we'll update you in the Friday letter so you can see it and wrap your hands and your mind around it. But almost 75% of the individuals who completed the survey do live in Rochester. And we do have that broken down by zip code, and there's a pretty even distribution relative to that. We have more females than males taking the survey, with a small number who identify as individuals who identify as non-binary. So females 61.2% as opposed to males 35.7%. The age distribution is pretty equal, so we're glad to see that we're getting a nice cross-section relative to that. We do ask a question about disability as far as considering themselves being a member, and we have about almost 20% of the individuals who've taken the survey identify. Right now, as far as race and ethnicity, 61% identify as white or Caucasian, with Black or African American at 30%, Hispanic or Latino 5%, and Asian Pacific Islander 7%. So that's an opportunity for us to just get into organizations or agencies that serve Black and brown individuals, right, to make sure we're getting the word out. 93% identify English being their first language. So again, we're going to tap into working with refugees, help refugees to get the word out more in that regard. And our community engagement specialist who's bilingual, Fi, is going to get out into and Spanish community more and do outreach. Relative to familiarity with the work and mission, 37% of the respondents are very familiar, 19% a little less familiar, 26% are kind of sort of familiar, and 11% not familiar at all. We asked about attending a PA event in the future. Of the 100 respondents, 44% said yes, 41% maybe, but I want to know a little bit more information beforehand. So that's about 85%. That's pretty encouraging. If you've already participated in a PAB event, how helpful did you find the presentation? Almost 70% indicated on a 5 scale, a 5. So our presentation seemed to be pretty effective. We asked this question around holding, does the city of Rochester do enough to hold the RPD officers accountable for their actions? 66% said no, and 18% said yes. And then this is one where people can give kind of their own answer, so there's lots of different answers. What else is important?
Did we ask about either sexual orientation or age?
Yes, we did. I had mentioned earlier, we have a pretty good distribution relative to age. Where was that? We identified bands of under 18, 18 to 24, 25 to 34, so on and so forth, and there's not a nice distribution there. We only asked around gender, but not sexual
Okay, 'cause
orientation.
that is an impacted population in terms of police. So.
Have you or anyone you know ever experienced what you thought could be police misconduct? And 54% said yes. How familiar are you with the complaint process? Two highest numbers, 39% are not familiar, with 30% indicating a 5 very familiar. So that was interesting to us. If you were to experience alleged misconduct, would you file a complaint? 54% said yes, 10% said no, 12% said maybe, but I don't know how to file. And this was an interesting number to us. 19% said maybe, but I'm worried that there would be retaliation from RPD. And then we also asked, do you think the PAB would be more effective if we had the power to discipline RPD officers directly? And 66% said yes. And then we asked the last question, we talked about that the fact that we're now releasing investigative reports, that we're posting them, that summarize incidents of alleged police misconduct. So they include our findings, recommendations, etc. How do you feel about these reports being released? And this is very similar to the way that we came into being. Almost 75% said great. I think it's important for the PAB to release the reports. So that's, again, just 100 individuals. We're getting out. We've talked to lots of community folks, and we're going to be tabling at some places. So we do believe that we'll hit our target. But that's just important information that I thought you want to hear since we hit the 100. I think it was today. So, okay. Any questions about that?
What is the target?
The target is we wanted to hit 500.
Okay.
Yeah. So please, if you haven't, I'm not putting anybody on blast. If you haven't taken it, please make sure as a board member you take it. And also encourage individuals to take it. You can, there's paper and pencil, old school, you can do with a drop down on the website. We also have a QR code where you can just take it on your phone. So we make it really, really easy, and it's both in English and in Spanish, okay? They've done a lot of outreach. They have recurring engagements at Cameron Ministries, the Father Tracy Center, so they have a community presence there. We established some new partnerships like the African American Health Coalition, the New York Immigration Coalition, and Save Rochester. And one of the things they're working on is they're doing what they're calling stakeholder mapping. So they have a database of over 200 community organizations, businesses, etc., in the quadrant. So when we come to you very soon, you can figure out what your community engagement, what your outreach is going to be as a PAB board member in your quote unquote neck of the woods. Okay. Case management. In December, we had 14 complaints. 12 were opened for investigation and 2 were administratively closed. And as Heather said, our intake forms are in English and Spanish on the website. The further translations underway to ensure. Oh, that's right. That's right, because that just happened. Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm glad you're here. Under policy and oversight, this was a significant milestone, and I know you all know this, but it's important for the public to know. Chief David Smith of the Rochester Police Department adopted PAB recommended changes to General Order 680, which is protest and mass demonstrations. So some of the key updates include defining civil disorder and unlawful assembly for clarity purposes, requiring proportional responses and clear guidelines on the use of chemical agents, and strengthening protocols for dispersal orders and mutual aid coordination. So this was huge because this was the first time that this happened. So thank you to Policy and Oversight and all the others who were involved. As you know, the cost of misconduct was approved at the last board meeting, so we're waiting to hear back on, to get feedback. Tonight, I'm going to turn this portion over to Ben to talk about the revisions to the disciplinary matrix.
Good evening, everyone.
Great evening.
I'm Ben Whitler, I'm the Deputy Executive Director. Yes, so we just, most of you know all this, but just for the benefit of the meeting, when we make disciplinary recommendations, when the board makes disciplinary recommendations, it's based on a disciplinary matrix, which is a document that we created that we think is sort of an ideal way for officers to receive discipline. And it's a document that was created with feedback, significant actually feedback and input from the Rochester Police Department and the Locust Club. And on an annual basis, we review the document to see whether it needs to be revised for our charter. And so this past, I guess, sort of fall, we began doing that, and we created a draft, the staff and I, which we sent to the board. We received board feedback, which we then incorporated into the draft. And then we sent the draft to Chief Smith and Locust Club to see if they had any feedback on the changes. We did not receive any feedback, but we did receive an acknowledgement of receipt from the chief who thanked us for sending it. And I'll just summarize essentially what the changes to the matrix are. None of them are anything I've described as fundamental. It more represents tweaks that have largely come from board members, having now reviewed approximately 43 cases in the last year and sort of learned what was working and what might need fixing. So on page 9, we have the chart that guides the different levels of offenses, 1 through 5, and the sort of presumptive penalties, depending on whether it's an officer's first sustained finding of misconduct or whether there were priors. And we made some changes to that to create sort of to be more in line with, I think, the principles of the matrix that disciplinary increases be gradual and that progressive discipline be imposed. So, there used to be a jump between a level 3 and a level 4 offense from 10 days to 60. That felt like too big of a jump, so we reduced that from 10 days to 30. We no longer have level 5 offenses for first offense for an officer. We no longer have a presumptive termination recommendation, which is just in line for first offenses, generally wanting to give an officer a second chance unless it's, an extremely egregious event. And for that, we've created a new category called 5A, the A standing for aggravated. The idea being that in a smaller number of the most serious offenses, termination might be warranted, even if the officer doesn't have a prior history. And we did focus more on heavier penalties for officers that have bigger histories of misconduct. As the PAB has been in existence for longer and we've built up, more of a sort of base, it's more common, obviously, than it was in the beginning, that we might see an officer multiple times, and it allows us to react to that information. So I think it's a more nuanced chart, and I think it's an appreciated change. The other probably most significant change is we just clarified around the aggregation of penalties. We're very thorough in our investigations, and so an officer may have committed an act that implicates 5 different rules that RPD has that all say versions of the same thing. And if that happens, we're going to analyze all 5 because we don't want to leave any stone unturned, but we recognize that it wouldn't be appropriate if all 5 things that say essentially the same thing recommend a 10-day suspension to say, okay, 10 times 5 is 50. And so what the revisions clarify is that we don't aggregate penalties. If there's a complaint of misconduct made against an officer, no matter how many rules they've alleged to be violated, the disciplinary recommendation would be based on whatever was the most serious rule they were alleged to have violated. And that matches more just the practice the board has generally used anyway in assessing officer discipline. So those are probably the biggest changes. Otherwise, we added some definitions. We added more information about what the board's role is in the investigative process, and we outlined the steps in the investigative process just to be clear to the public and to officers about what our process is. So, at a later point in this meeting, you'll have an opportunity to vote to adopt these changes, and we'll continue to, revisit our matrix annually to make sure it's the best that it can be. Otherwise, I have just the other investigations division update, just to let you all know that we're anticipating adding 2 staff members. We, in the past month, interviewed for vacancies we have for digital forensic analysts and a staff attorney, and we've offered positions for both of those that have been accepted. So we're really hoping that this time next month, those folks may be on board and you'll be able to meet them. And last but not least, I also wanted to say thank you, Mary Wambach. Really appreciated your service as a board member. Been incredibly supportive of police accountability in this city, and though we're sad to see you leave the board, your contributions were tremendous. So thanks for everything.
Here, here.
I had a question, Dan. Oh, should we wait till we vote? You want to do?
No, let's talk about the matrix because I'm going to leave.
Yeah, I just had a question on the determining outcomes. There is, the alternative outcomes,
Yes.
especially if maybe it could be like an apology or something, or, there's other things that are, I think that the complainant may be okay with, even if it's not a discipline. But I mean, we have counseling and training as kind of the lowest recommendation, but that doesn't necessarily engage with the person who did the complaint. Or do you see those alternatives under that, or just how do we quantify if we're saying the officer was rude, but it wasn't something that, that we see as a violation necessarily, but if the complainant is open to it, there could be some other kind of.
Yeah, I think that, what you're observing is that the alternative outcomes are not included in the chart as presumptive, and that's because they're alternative outcomes. We recognize that the alternative system of discipline, which our policy and oversight team put together and we think would be great, is not necessarily something that the RPD currently has like a process to utilize. And so what we've done in the past is if the board thinks a measure is appropriate for a sustained allegation of misconduct beyond a counseling memo, training, or a suspension, then they would just indicate that. But we didn't feel like it should be presumptive based on level because it felt very fact specific. So certainly nothing prevents the board from recommending an apology or some type of restorative measure, public service, things of that nature. But because we want to also recognize what disciplinary measures RPD currently has in place and actually employs, the chart that we created assumes those measures. So
I was worried about, maybe worry is too strong a word, but if we're actually making a recommendation as the review committee, like, I want to make sure, and it goes to the chief, he can do whatever he wants with, but if it's somehow, I don't want to give an hour, that's reflective of the charter, that you can make that kind of recommendation. But I just want to be able to lay the groundwork of, we can do all kinds of different things. Here's one level that, is kind of clear, but we have other ideas or thoughts of potential action that the chief could take. I just want to make sure that we have something related back to the matrix that says it's under this, that we're saying that.
Right, so that would be the determining outcomes with the standard and alternative outcomes chart. And, subpoint B, the matrix allows the investigator to consider alternative outcomes which are aimed at restoring the relationship. So,
It says investigator, though. I mean, it's, so.
We could change that to board.
It is because the investigator can recommend, but
Yeah,
if it's not.
no, you're right.
Because technically as a board, we don't have a choice, outside of council training to say it's X or Y.
Yes, I agree that the word investigator can be changed, it should be changed to board. So we can certainly do that and then vote on a later date, or we can just agree to do that. And that's the only change.
But should we have investigator and board in there instead of
Investigator
eliminating
and
one?
board as well.
Yeah.
Yep, right, because the investigator makes the recommendation and
Right.
the board makes the final decision.
Yes.
So, but yeah, I think it's important to be clear. The board can and has in the past recommend alternative discipline that
Yeah.
is potentially non-standard for how RPD normally handles something.
Okay. I guess that's a motion if everybody's with that.
Yeah.
If that's a friendly, I shouldn't say friendly, we're all together. Watching too much C-SPAN, which people like this, it's in these boards do. Is everybody okay with if when we vote later, if that's changed, that we will go ahead as well?
So we would have the investigator and the board.
Can I get a second on that motion?
Second.
All in favor of that? Okay, so later when we get to that, will be like a friendly.
Any other questions or comments?
Thank you very much.
Before you get up, we
I
just want
appreciate
to also, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just want to say, I appreciate the clarity.
Oh, thank you.
But today, Ben graduated. He graduated from the Lead On program, which is an 11-week leadership development program that's offered through the city. So Ben spent 9 Wednesdays all day being trained by the Jackman Group LLC. And so today was the culmination. He presented his success plan, and he is officially a Lead On certified. So congratulations.
Congratulations.
Very much.
Previously, Rosabelle has gone through the program, and Dolores went through the program as well. So.
Yeah, I have a plan for succession planning for when people are out, so that people can fill their roles that I'm looking forward to implementing that I worked with Patrick Jackson on. And I'm very appreciative to the city and Dr. Myers Small and the organization to afford me the opportunity to be out. It was hard being out of the office once a week, and there's always stuff that I could be doing that other people have to do, but I appreciate it and I'll try to pay it forward.
Great, thanks.
Actually, before he goes, I know you want to get out, but just 15 more questions. No, just, I know there was a hearing today in regards to the, can you just talk about that?
Sure. Okay. Of course. Yes. So at the Court of Appeals today, there was a case heard between the city and the New York Civil Liberties Union, and it was over the publication of police discipline records. In 2020, the law changed in New York State such that law enforcement officers used to have special protections for their employment records that were sort of only for law enforcement options. They basically took those protections away and said that they were to be treated as any other disciplinary records. And there has been a legal dispute between the city and I guess people who have been seeking those records and the public ever since. Because the city took a arguably narrow view of the impact of that decision, and some people may be familiar with the 50A portal, which is named after the law, which is where people can go and see misconduct records of Rochester police officers. That database that the city did proactively put up is arguably incomplete because it only includes sustained allegations of misconduct where RPD agrees that misconduct happens and actually disciplined an officer over the misconduct. And so the argument the Court of Appeals heard today was, is that all they need to put up? or do they also need to include, allegations of misconduct that may not have resulted in discipline, or that may not have arguably been substantiated? And so when the NYCLU originally sued the city, the trial court ruled in the city's favor, but the appellate court in the Fourth Department ruled in the NYCLU's favor. And so, despite that favorable ruling for transparency, because the city appealed, the impact of the decision was stayed until it went to the Court of Appeals. So it was a robust argument today. I don't want to predict the outcome, but potentially we may get clarity from the highest court in the state. I mean, we will, over to what extent can the public see information about police misconduct allegations. And obviously, since the PAB deals with police misconduct allegations, it will impact some of the things that we do potentially. We've obviously been leaning in favor of transparency, in favor of making the public aware of what they're legally allowed to be aware of. And, we believe that we have been in the legal right, and certainly it's currently the law of the land that we're able to do that, and we're eagerly anticipating, the Court of Appeals weighing in.
Thanks, Ben.
So today was the argument.
In Albany.
Everyone did a great job. All right.
So now we just wait?
Yeah, I don't know how long it will take them to put out a decision. It's going to be impactful because this is going to affect the whole state. Right? Even though the city of Rochester is the defendant in this case, it will be precedent for every civilian accountability review board. And I know that Syracuse kind of had a companion case that was the same issue: people trying to foil police discipline records. And so, even if the direction is relatively clear, they're still going to be very careful about exactly what they say and don't say. So it may be a couple months before we get it. And there's questions also about redactions, right? Okay, if we agree on what's public and what's not, what has to be redacted and what isn't. And there's questions around what the process would be to determine, is it a case-by-case thing? Is there going to be a bright line rule? So that's what the court is going to wrestle with.
It seemed that I tuned in earlier than the Rochester case, right? And it seemed that there was a case prior to it that was talking about whether police records prior to the enactment of the law that said they're open are going to be available or not. Do you know anything about that one?
I saw that it was on the docket. I
Yeah.
did not catch the argument because I was not lead on with Dr. Myersmall, but yeah, it kind of makes sense. They like to handle similar issues all at once. So there could be, a suite of legal opinions that come out in the spring that all bear on what we do in some fashion. So it's exciting. There's, a large body of law relating to the publication of police misconduct records that's just kind of been coming in the last few years in New York, obviously out of, George Floyd and Daniel Prude and that sort of stuff. So there could be some changes.
So for those who didn't see it, we'll get the link to you. I know you asked earlier via email. So we'll get that, and we can even post it to our own website too. So
yeah, it is perhaps echoing some arguments that were made earlier, late last year around our decision to publish our reports in September, and you'll notice a lot of similar themes. And I think that it was nice to hear those arguments being made in the highest court in the state.
Okay.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you,
very
Ben.
much.
Training and professional development, that's core to what we do also. So we had a lot of training in December around transparency. As I mentioned previously, we did complete the Citizens Police Academy training in December, and one of our own board members, Bill Clark, he graduated from the Citizens Police Academy. He's got it. He's got it. But I have to say, I do meet with the chief of police, and I told him that we really enjoyed learning all of the information and having an opportunity to interact with the different levels within RPD, and it was valuable. So they're starting up again in April, and we'll send more staff. So with that, it's important to let the public know that for the first time, I had the conversation with the lieutenant in charge of the academy and the police chief. The the Police Accountability Board will be presenting at the Citizens Police Academy.
Great.
So we'll
Wow.
have a little bit of a module, or we'll be part of a module. So we really feel like that is progress.
Yes.
And, who knows, we might be able to one day present to the recruit, so, but I'll take this
Yeah.
right now,
Absolutely.
okay? Under strategic initiatives, you heard from Heather around the language access plan, so I won't say that again. And from Deb around the strategic plan development. You met Brianna, Ben talked about the DFA, and the staff attorney, but we are interviewing, the Director of Investigations candidates. We'll have some more interviews in a couple weeks, and we hope that we are able to find a candidate. So Ben and I are both very hopeful. So we are hiring, and we are building our workforce back up again. And we do have a community forum that we are still working on. So in day 1, Brianna hit the ground with planning this community forum, but we had a conversation with Mr. Robert Brooks, who is the father of Robert Brooks, the individual who was incarcerated and died while being incarcerated, and that's been shown on video multiple times. And the goal is really to amplify the voices of those impacted by law enforcement misconduct and to reaffirm our commitment to justice and accountability. And while we don't handle incarceration, right, the officials who work with incarcerated individuals, it is tangentially related, and we'll be a host of that and help to facilitate that. So we're excited about that. So I really feel like we hit the ground running in January with ending the year with some really good things. December was very busy. And I feel like we forged ahead in some areas, and I just feel very, very hopeful. And we are really excited about what's on the horizon for us as an agency. And again, on behalf of our agency, we thank you for your support and for just your encouragement and your ear. And I just have to echo my sentiments when I started here at the PAB. Now I've been here over 6 months. Mary was one of the first board members that just grabbed me by the hands, both of my hands, and just said, we are so excited for you to be here. And I will really miss her advocacy, her strength, the perspective that was so unique that she brought to the table. And so I wish her well. And I shared with her that this isn't goodbye, it's just see you later in this respect, but I will absolutely keep in touch with her. You will be missed, Mary, by me for sure.
Thank you. All right, on the chair report. Before I start the chair report, everybody said I wasn't here at the beginning of the meeting, but if you have anything for Mary that you want to say, I'll have a look at the opportunity to.
Oh, nice.
if you want.
Well, I feel like so much has been said, but for sure, I really enjoyed the opportunity to work with her. Am I saying it to her? Is she watching us? So it was wonderful, and I'll just echo what folks said about your passion for accountability and the work of this board. And I know we'll be hearing from you one way or another in the long run, and I just wish you all the best.
Thanks. All right, for a chair report, I'll start off with, the need for accountability, in all the levels of law enforcement, like Dr. Myers just saw, Robert Brooks, who's a member of our community, Robert Brooks' father. Rochester's a big, small town. I know Robert also. I know other board and staff that know him, and his work that he does as a community member, volunteering, doing engagement with youth and song and dance, poetry, and the devastation of what he went through with the death of his son, and his son, who has a son also who is now without a father. And Robert had talked about how Rick had talked about how he had at the rally outside the jail. He spoke really movingly. One thing that really stuck with me was how he had got a second chance in life, and he took advantage of it and is doing so many great things now. And his son never got that opportunity to get that second chance, and that he was serving a sentence, but it wasn't a death sentence. And so that goes back to when we do our panel reviews and other law enforcement Agencies that do oversight over law enforcement, the importance of the body cameras and the importance of seeing other eyes and even cameras that people have, that maybe, that other footage that we can get. People in prisons, without that, you don't know what's going on. There isn't the public in a prison setting. And we don't know what happened with, I think we have ideas of what happened, but those officers obviously reacted in a manner where maybe they thought those body cameras weren't going to catch what they were doing, or if they did expect to get caught, it's even worse in a way. But that kind of goes back to body cameras was something that the community pushed for here in Rochester, even before the PAB existed. And there was a lot of resistance from law enforcement and all levels of law enforcement early on all across the country for body cameras, let alone the other kinds of accountability that we do. And when there's stories told by people that are not powerful or perceive they don't have power, they need other ways to be able to prove what they're saying to the general public. And those cameras are kind of really basic thing. But along what we have here with the Police Accountability Board, which is all kinds of levels above just cameras, but that's still kind of basic. And even our basic powers have been under attack. But I'm hoping that within the prison system and other law enforcement agencies that aren't necessarily incarcerational, that the base level of having body cameras, and then those should always be on. And the policies that we have around body cameras, which we have done work there about. And we've even noticed, when we do our recommendations, oftentimes body cameras not being properly utilized is something that we do a recommendation for discipline on. We saw it in a horrific manner last month. Without the lack of that, he would not have justice if that body camera did not exist. So that kind of reinforces, as we begin this new year, the example that we're leading here, with the work that we're doing, making sure that everything that is in that charter is fully implemented, and that we are fully able to engage in the work that the charter says that we should be able to do, and the access to data that we should have, and access to records that we should have, that people voted on. Like we said, Dr. Myers alluded to, over 70%, 75, almost close to 75% a few years ago. So I had this long thing I was going to do about the beginning of the year, but I shortened it to just say, each year that this agency has been in existence, the following year has been better than the previous year. We had a rough beginning, but we persevered thanks to this board and previous board members, and thanks to all the staff, even those that aren't here with us anymore, that had a view of the mission. A year ago, with our interim executive director, Sherry had done a better job than the year before. Here we are just a few months in into your term, Dr. Myers, and I know we're much stronger now in January than we were a year ago. So I want to thank the staff. I want to thank my fellow board members. I want to thank the community that's been on us to make sure we do better, and also has been helping do better engagement. I do want to thank City Council, especially, whether we've improved the relationship with, and have also said they've noticed, and are engaging in a positive manner with the improvement of what the charter has asked us to do. And along with the mayor, even some of the strides we're making with RPD. There's still a long way to go. And there's still legal stuff out there, that battles that we are fighting, will continue to fight. In regards to what is pretty clear to us on the board and the staff and the community that the charter says we should do. I do want to thank everybody, especially the board, who's volunteering their time. So that's my chair's report. Committee reports. We have a meeting with the policy committee later this month. Look forward to that.
End of the month.
Yep. To talk about, looking forward, going over to the next year, this year, policy recommendations and priorities of what they're going to be looking at. Anything for old business? New business? Do we need anything for executive session?
We do have a few things, yeah.
Um,
Just under, I guess, new business per se. I don't know if you've ever been out with community engagement or if you've done any, but we have all of these different booklets and information. And again, under public affairs and community engagement, this is all in one resource booklet now. All of that stuff, the little pamphlets, the little doodads, it's all in one. So this is a draft, so I just ask if you take one and pass it. And certainly if you have any feedback for us, but they did a really, really nice job. compiling the information and getting it down to one document, so it's just simple and you don't have all of these different ones out
Great.
there. Okay?
Nice.
They make it in a way that's engaging, it's easily accessible, I believe, but not insulting. They do a nice job of unpacking and explaining and defining. So we're on our way to have a new booklet that comes out. Okay?
All right, I'd like to take a motion to go to executive session just to discuss any personnel issues
So moved.
and potential litigation. We still have that?
Yep.
All right, all in favor? All right, we are adjourned for executive session.
hasn't.
Oh,
We're back?
okay.
Okay, we are back. Thank everybody who's still watching. We actually have a vote that we have to take, so you get a little Easter egg at the end of the meeting you don't normally get to see. We did not approve the matrix earlier. We did have the amendment that we approved, but there was no votes taken in executive session. Nothing to report there, but I do want to go back to new business and make a motion to approve the disciplinary matrix as given to us earlier with the amendment.
Second.
All in favor of approving the disciplinary matrix?
Aye.
Any nays? Doesn't look like it. All right, so that is approved. It will be going up online along with the minutes soon. And no other business. Your motion to adjourn. All right.
Wait.
We got a vote. All in favor? All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching.